My name is Danetta Henson, and today we will be talking about Titchener and his contributions to psychology. Titchener was born January 11, 1867. He began his college career at the age of 14, and he attended Malvern College. He attended this college for 4 years. In 1885, he moved on to Oxford, and in 1890, leaving Oxford with a degree, an A.B. degree. While studying at Oxford, he studied the classics and philosophy and held senior exhibitor. This is what we refer to as a scholarship. In 1890, he received a doctorate in philosophy. After his time spent in England, he would be offered a job to run the psychological lab at Cornell College. This opportunity was presented due to his friendships and connections that he had made while his short time in England. It also gave him the chance to conduct his very own research. Now, there are two main topics to discuss about Titchener. The first is the experimental psychology. This is also referred to as the manuals. Now, the manuals were for laboratory practice. It was to teach his students how to properly conduct research in the lab. And he wrote this for teachers and students. Now, the one for the teachers was a lot longer, more extensive, and more detailed, since they were the one teaching the students. They had more information to give and more to learn. Now, the manuals came out in 2 volumes. The first was Qualitative Experiments, and it came out in 1901. This consisted of experiments based of basic sensory, perceptual, and affect processes. The second volume, Quantitative Experiments, came out in 1905. And this included psychophysics and reaction time procedures, more of the numerical data. Now, in his manuals, he made an emphasis on drill courses. These were necessary because they were there for students to practice conducting research by using classic studies. These helped the students learn how to set up in the lab, the type of tools that were in the lab, and just to get a feel of the environment in the lab. Now, if the student wasn't able to replicate the study, they were to go back and retrace their steps and to see and find if there were any error that they had made. He also introduced the type of observers, and these were basically students who participated in his studies, and they would give detailed description of their experiences. Around this time was when he started introducing the idea of introspection. Introspection are where observers would give detailed reports of the conscious events occurring while completing some sort of task. Now, in 1910, behaviorism began attacking and questioning introspection, claiming that there was not too much difference between Titchener's experts, and they put experts in quotations because they really didn't feel that they were necessarily experts. Even though the experts went through many hours and months and days of training, it was very extensive, and training that isn't really even ideal to modern day labs. Now, there are 3 ways Titchener trained his experts. The first was combination of tones, and he used 2 tone frequencies, one of upper frequency and one of lower. He would present both of these tones to a student, and the student would often report that they would hear a third tone. It would often be quieter and lower than the other 2 previous tones. This was labeled as a difference tone. The second way he trained his experts was through flight of colors. This is an experience of after images. The students would sit in a dark room for a certain amount of time, and when signaled, the shades would be opened, and they would be looking directly in the middle of a window. Now, in every basic window that they would stare out, there would be a T-shaped form in the window, and they would be staring at the vertical line running in the middle of the window. This was the first image that they were to have seen. They were asked to quickly close their eyes and describe the images that they were seeing. Now, this process was repeated until the student was to have the same experience each time. Now, the third and final way he trained his experts was through non-obvious visual illusions. There are two levels of this method, one easy and one more complicated. I will only talk about the easy one. The easy one is a basic setup. It was presented with an object and it had a line running diagonally behind it. Most of the objects were shapes. The easiest one was a rectangle. When upon first looking at this, the students would say that the line was crooked, but given a second chance and a closer and longer observation, they would see that the line was actually straight. During these visual illusions, Titchener was making a point, and the point that he had made is that whenever a line is the point of fixation, it often brought the line forward. Now, the second topic to talk about is the foundation of the experimentalist. He founded the group in 1904 after having a rough and rocky relationship with the American Psychological Association. His relationship was so due to the fact that he didn't feel the association put much emphasis on research and experimental psychology, and which he felt that was the most important part. He also had an altercation with another member. Now, this member was plagiarizing some of his mentor's work, and he felt offended about this. And since the fact that he was plagiarizing and people had known about it, the group still kept the member in this association, and he didn't feel that this was ethical at all. So he founded the Experimentalist. This was mainly for experimental psychologists since he was one himself. And they would meet 3 days out of every spring, and every spring they'd bounce from one laboratory to another. Every year would be a different one. They would discuss research. And to him, they were keeping the spirit of a pure laboratory alive. Now, all of the members were men. There was no women. And he had it this way because he wanted the men to be able to speak freely and passionately about the topics that were being presented. And doing so, some of the language and the aggression and the actions that were taking place in these groups was not appropriate in front of women for this time. And since he considered himself a gentleman, he did not want this idea of him to be dissolved. Now, I must point out that most of his students, even his doctoral program, were women. So he wasn't totally anti-women. It was just for this club. This club was mainly for men to speak freely. And after his death, the group realized that their organization was highly segregated. So they allowed women to join the group. Even if that was the case, the attendance of women was still ultimately low. Titchener died unexpectedly August 3rd, 1927, leaving behind a great legacy. And even though his career began with classics and philosophy, when he decided to change his direction to science, it was a change for the good. His manuals were used widely in classrooms and in laboratories. Even with criticism to introspection, he still believed in his work and also had many who believed in it as well, some who even believe in it to this day. And that is my report on Titchener and Titchener Psychology. Thank you.